going to look at 4.26 now, and I just want to make sure that you have this. I'm just going to pick some random problems, like problem number, I guess we'll go from 1. If I have a positive 5 and a positive 4 times a negative 3, what do you think my result's going to be? Negative. And why, Peyton? Why do you think it's going to be negative? Okay, good. You could do exactly what she's saying here. You could multiply these two and you get a positive 20. And then so that means it's a positive 20 times a negative 3. So a positive times a negative is a negative. Here's another way to think about this if you have a whole bunch of numbers. This one wasn't so bad because there was only 3 numbers. But if you had a whole list of numbers, if you have an odd number of negatives, the answer will be negative. Let me show you some examples to show you why. The answer will be negative. Okay, so how many negatives do we have here? 1, right? And 1's an odd number. If there's an even number, the negatives pair up and make a positive. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Number 4. 4 has except 4 is a trick question. 4 is a trick question. Why is 4 a trick question?
Yeah, that one was so hard, I couldn't figure it out no matter how hard.
Since one of the factors is 0, the product is 0.
Yeah, since one of them is 0, the product is 0. So that's not really a good example, is it? But we'll look at 5. 5 will have something similar to it. 5 has a positive 12 and a negative 8 and a negative 3 and a positive 2. All right, how many negatives do I have here? 2. Now, these 2 negatives are going to multiply. They're going to pair up to become a positive, right? So I end up with 12, and let's just say I go ahead and multiply those 2 together. That would be a positive 24 if I multiply negative 8 and negative 3, right? And then I could also multiply by 2. So if you have an even number of negatives, they end up pairing up to become positive. If you have an odd number, there's 1 left out, so your result becomes negative. Let's find one like that. Look at number 7. 7 is negative 6 times 5. I'm not going to put the plus there. That's just stupid. 4, sorry, negative 3, negative 2, and a positive 1. Let's circle all of our negatives, because we know when you multiply positives, you get positives. We've been doing that all our lives, that we know multiplication. There's 3 negatives, right? You can't even see that yellow. Let me make it darker. There, didn't take. Come on. There, and there. I could, for instance, pair these 2 up, and these 2 together would become positive, right? So they would pair up to make a positive. So everything from here on out would be positive, right? But then I got that 1 leftover negative. And so a negative times all the rest of that positive is still going to make it a negative, okay? So let's see. 6 times 5 is 30. 30 times 4 would be 120. 120 times 3 would give me 360. 360 times 2 would give me 720. And 720 times 1 would be 720. So we'd get, on number 7, for instance, we'd get a negative 720. That's a good question. Look at number 2. Negative 6 times negative 4 times negative 7 times negative 2. How many negatives are there? 4. So since there's an even number of negatives, my answer is going to be positive, and here's why. These 2 negatives pair up and make a positive. Let's just go ahead and multiply them. Positive 24, right? These 2 negatives pair up and they make a positive 14. So it ends up being a positive times a positive. So you can, instead of even having to think about the sign too much, you can just count how many negatives there are. And if there's an odd number, that means there's an odd guy out, right? He didn't get paired up with anybody, so he is very unhappy and negative, and the whole thing becomes negative. If you look at him as a little person, he drug everybody down. But if he has a partner that's also negative. They get together and they're all happy and they're positive, and so in cases like this one though, we just would say, oh, there's an even number, so everybody's going to get a partner and be positive. They're happy numbers if they're positive numbers, I guess you could say. And let's see, let's multiply this out and see what we get. What is that, 96 and 24, 336? Is that what you got? Okay, so positive 336 on number 2. So we could say even number of negatives gives positive answer. And then odd number of negatives gives negative answer. So we make a little list here of what we're loading. See, we did problem 1472. That's 4.26.